get started. Appreciate everybody coming out today. I've got a nice crowd. So Danny and I kind of started this journey back this summer. We're looking at dry fertilizer prices, specifically like phosphorus prices are super high right now. So trying to look at ways of what we can do differently to bring value to you guys. It kind of led us down this path of let's look at some liquid fertilizer and see if we can maybe substitute or add in addition and try and add to your ROI and add to yield. So that led us to Yield Innovations. We think they've got a pretty cool system in place. There's pieces of the system that every single one of you guys can be using. We're excited to get in front of you. And Brian McAllister with Yield Innovations, he's going to be giving a presentation today, telling you about that system and what it can do for you guys. So appreciate everybody being here. It's a great crowd.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. All right. Quick intro. We've got Jackson Manuel is here. So Jackson is the regional sales manager for Indiana and works with Danny and Tyler. So quick thing about me. So I spent 10 years in ag retail. I spent 15 years at Beck's. So I was the practical farm research director. So kind of that research book, that was something that I did. And the last 6 years I've been here. A couple guys and myself started this company 6 years ago. We just decided we've grown 15x in the last 5 years. And in September, we just decided to kind of tell the world who we are. Created a website for the first time in 6 years, started social media, and started hiring dealers. And so we call our dealers yield consultants because that's what we want them to do. We want them to be more than just somebody that sells you something, but we really create a system that's personal for every one of you. So the one thing for you to grab before we get going is that we've got a systems approach to yield. We call it TAPS, which stands for the Agronomic Profit System. But every single one of you is different. So we have to have a system that is personalized and different for every single one of you. Okay, because you all have different equipment, you have different ground. So we personalize a system to every single one of you. So let's just, we're going to use this product guide like it's a roadmap to yield, which is what we tried to intend for it to be. And it's almost like a textbook. Okay, so if you have questions, just throw them out there. Raise your hand or don't, doesn't matter. This can be informal, it's a big group, but doesn't matter. I want everybody to understand everything that we're talking about here today. If you open up the front cover of this book, it's really important to us. It's important enough we put it in writing. So in the very front cover, it says, why Yield Innovations? Well, Yield Innovations exists to empower farmers with knowledge to understand three things. What it is you're buying, why you should or maybe should not, buy different yield enhancing products, and then how do you use these things to make more money. That is why we created the company. It's really, really important to us. We feel like there's a whole lot of incorrect information or just a lack of information that is given to farmers in general. And we want you to understand the agronomics behind every decision. Okay, so that's why we created it. So flip over one more page. And at the top of page 4, it says Farm on Purpose with the Agronomic Profit System. And so this is basically a systems approach to yield and profitability that's going to vary by farm based on your equipment and your goals. Okay, so why you should consider a systems approach is really threefold. So number one, we have seen it creates more consistency. I saw this when I was the practical farm research director. We would test certain things, and we found that if we did this and this and this, they were synergistic with one another and things improved. But sometimes we'd put two things together that were supposed to add 10 bushel and they lost 7. So we're trying to avoid those things. And this is kind of what we figured out. We figured out which things help each other. And we're going to go through that. So nothing in ag, as you guys know, works 100% of the time. Nothing does. Seed doesn't even grow 100% of the time. I mean, sometimes you get the opportunity to replant. So nothing works all the time. We are looking for things that have a win ratio of like 70%. Like if you can make money 70% of the time with something that you're adding, that's generally, pretty good in ag. Number 2, a systems approach removes, it doesn't remove it. It helps with the emotions that are involved in farming. As you guys know, if it rains, you feel one way. If it doesn't, you feel another. If the market's up one day, you feel a different way than when it's down 40 cents. Okay, emotions come into play in all these decisions that you do. What we have figured out here after doing this for a while is that if we create a system that maybe we put this together in the winter when emotions are not as in play, and you understand the agronomy behind why we're doing the things that we're doing, you're more apt to follow it through, and that leads to more consistent results. Rather than, it's not raining, forget it, I'm just going to pull that thing, I'm not going to do it. That's usually the wrong decision most of the time. We're just playing with odds here, as you do with farming. It's a game of odds. We're trying to create a system that gives you better odds of success, okay? It's not 100%. The last thing it does is it builds resilient crops. This it absolutely does. What we see is when we're having periods of no rain, these crops handle it better. We have higher floors on a bad year, and we have higher ceilings on a good year. That's what we're shooting for, and that's what the agronomic profit system gives us. Okay, so at the top of page 5, we're just going to start off with, this is like a high-level concept, 30,000-foot view. This is the agronomic profit system, big picture. And then from there, we'll dive into the individual things. And I'm going to show you stuff today I'm sure you've never seen before. I think you'll find it, if I don't just blow your brain up, you're gonna feel like, okay, this is cool. And make sure if there's something that doesn't make sense, just throw it. Everyone else is thinking it too. So just throw out the question, okay? Seriously. So 6 steps. Step 1, focus dry fertilizer dollars only in areas below the critical levels that are likely to make you money. So that's kind of step 1, and we'll get into the data behind that. Step 2, we want to create a personalized nutrient approach, meaning it's going to differ from farm to farm, that spoon feeds nutrients. When I say spoon feeds, I don't mean like a national corn growers contest where they're doing something every week. I mean, when you're out there doing something, we're making sure that we're giving the crop what it needs, okay? And it says in available forms. So we're going to talk about these 3 things. What are available forms? And then in key times. Well, what are the key times? This has not been something that's been easily found in the past. And then what are the right places? And how do you know what the right places are? What's the right place to put zinc? So that's what we're going to talk about. Protecting roots from rotting season long. That's kind of important. You don't want your roots to rot. Okay. 4th, the health of the crown of the corn plant and proactive disease protection from the inside out. This is not the days of old with old-timey university recommendations where it's like, well, we're going to scout and we're going to see if we have something. Well, then by the time we get whatever done, it's been a couple weeks and we've lost yield. So this is a proactive approach to, like, today's genetics are phenomenal. Okay, they can really yield. So how do we get more out of them? That's what we're talking about. 6, ensuring all yield-enhancing products have maximum plant cell uptake through the process of endocytosis. So I'm going to show you some stuff today about that, but this is talking about using nanotechnology. And there is a new technology that is making everything we do more consistent, and that's nanotechnology. So we're going to talk about how we use that. Okay, so those are the 6 high-level concepts. You can flip over to page 6. If you're a picture person, then what you see on page 6 is a picture of what I just said, okay? Page 7 is just a testimonial, and then we'll go on to page 8, and that'll be the beginning of step 1, okay? So now the first 35 pages of this book or so are just the system. It's not about products that we sell. It's just agronomy, okay? So if you look at the very top of page 8, it says step 1 is focus dry fertilizer dollars only in areas below the critical level. Okay, so what is the critical level? What does that mean? So some of you know, okay, but for those that don't, the critical level means if you're below this area, yield loss is likely to occur. That's what it means. If you're below this area, yield loss is likely to occur. So what is the critical level for phosphorus? Does anybody know? So for phosphorus, critical level, are you in parts per million or pounds per acre?
We do both. I mean,
You do both?
yeah.
Mostly pounds.
Mostly pounds? And you're Malick 3.
Yes.
Okay, so the critical level we're going to talk about is 40 pounds per acre. So write that down. That's your critical level for phosphorus. Your critical level for potassium is going to vary by your cation exchange capacity, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we'll say it's 200 if you have a CEC of 10, and if you have some sand pockets, then you're probably going to be closer to that 175.
Maybe some more in that red box.
Yeah, I'll just keep going until I find a really good one. That's better. Okay, so just kind of jot that down for now. So let's look at page 8. It says dry fertilizer rarely increases yields. And why would I say that? So there's three reasons. Okay, number one, the roots rarely come in contact with it. Okay, so here's a picture. If you just think about the way that you broadcast spread it and where all those little fertilizer prills land, there's not much movement with dry fertilizer. It's pretty immobile in the soil. It's not moving a great distance. And so we plant in rows. We plant in 30-inch rows. And so at 32,000 with an 8-inch root mass, what this picture shows us is that basically we're coming in contact with about 25% of what you spread. So you spread 200 pounds, then the roots are going to come in contact with about 50 of it. So I think the first misconception is that we have to spread 200 or 300 pounds. We have to have a lot of product going out. Well, you do if it's in an inefficient location. If it's not near the roots, you have to have a lot more to get enough. Okay? But if you think about that efficiency, and we're only coming in contact with a fourth of it, that just tells you right out of the gate, we need a lot less than what we think. We have to, if that's the way we're going to do it, then you got to spread a lot to have enough. Okay? That's the first thing. Second thing, not all roots are created equal. So for those of you who do follow Bex, you might have seen this. If you don't follow Bex, you might not have. So here's a QR code that will take you to their root reveal study. Okay? This has nothing to do with their seed. And we're not talking about Bex seed. This is just their root reveal study. This is some cool information. This started with the University of Illinois. So University of Illinois, they started realizing that there were some different root types. And sometimes, if they placed fertilizer in the furrow, they would see up to a 50 bushel yield response versus other hybrids that had different roots. And that's kind of what got the wheels turning, and they weren't really sure what was going on there. So they partnered with Beck's Practical Farm Research, and the two of them kind of figured this out. And so at the bottom of page 8, what we have figured out is that there's 3 distinct root architecture types. So there's these vertical rooted hybrids that go straight down. They really respond to in-furrow placement of fertilizer and 2x2x2 placement of fertilizer because they're just not exploring a lot of the soil profile. Then you've got this thing that's kind of in the middle that they're just calling balance, and then you've got these horizontal roots that go way out. Those horizontal roots, they found, those also have to do with population. So those ones don't like to be crowded. I mean, they may be planted at 28 or 30, and you start pushing them, then the yield starts going down. And this has to do with how the plant senses its neighbors. It has to do with the roots and how they grow. Okay, so this has a direct bearing on a lot of things. So if you look at the top of page 9, it says that for every increase of 1,000 plants per acre in planting population, root volume decreases by 2.5%. Okay, so I don't know, you remember when rootworm corn first came out? And we're like, bigger roots, got to mean more yield, right? And then the first generation of those, maybe not so much. I was actually selling seed when that happened. I remember selling the first triple stack corn. It cost $200 a bag, and I about flipped. I'm like, how am I going to sell something that costs $200 a bag? And so I sold it, and the corn went flat. And it had the rootworm trait. It's like, explain that to your guy. But the point is, bigger roots don't just mean bigger yield, right? Yeah.
So you're proposing that the nutrients that are in the soil, you require root interaction to the nutrient, or how are you accounting for the biology?
That's a great question. So the question was, are we saying that the roots have to, it come in contact with the nutrient to get it to come into the plant? Yes, on some of them,
Well,
but no on some of them.
right, that's the whole
Yeah.
point of the matter.
Yes, they're different.
Yeah, you've got to stimulate both actions.
That's right. So we're going to get to that. So it's a perfect lead in. So the point is, there's something that's going on under the ground with our hybrids that is starting to make some sense. So if you think about your history of, let's say you planted a test plot. If anybody in here sells seed, maybe you planted a test plot one year, and here's the one that won, and it was first place. And then you go down 5 miles down the road to one of your customers or your buddy, and he plants this exact same plot. And the winner is the loser. I mean, it's not in the middle, it's at the bottom. Why? And so what we've always said for years is, well, that's just because you have to have hundreds of thousands of reps, and all that washes itself out. But what we're finding is, oh no, that's not what's going on here. This is the management that was done to that. And so if that was a vertical rooted hybrid that won the plot here, and that guy used in furrow and 2x2, and then down the road it's still a vertical rooted hybrid, but they just broadcast spread urea, AMS, or they did anhydrous or something, and there's a 50 bushel difference. So that's what University of Illinois is saying, is that there can be up to a 50 bushel difference based on your management of the root type. That's what we're figuring out. Okay, that is undeniable. That has been figured out. Now we've got to get all the seed brands to rate their roots. Now, until they do, and we know what all the architecture of the root types are, the best way to manage this is we need fertilizer in the furrow, we need it in the 2x2, we need it at side dress, we probably need it in a wide drop on our toolbar, we need to put some in the leaves, and when we're spraying fungicide, we probably need to put some there. Okay, if we do that, we're managing all root types if we don't know what the root type is. Okay, so this is why sometimes just spread and dry, we do it because we've always done it that way, but we don't necessarily see a yield increase, and it doesn't necessarily make us money. Okay, so let's flip to the next page. Page 10, we start getting into the third reason why dry fertilizer rarely increases yields. Decades of data from many universities confirm that dry consistently makes money. Now I'm talking about making money, not necessarily yield, but making money when you're below the critical levels. Decades of data. Okay, so this is 25 years of data from Ohio State University right here. Ohio State and Purdue both have about 3 decades of data saying the exact same thing. I could have pulled this exact data from 15 other universities. I just chose to keep it close to home. Okay, so what this is saying is that the Ohio State is saying, if we just read the last sentence in the red bubble, these field trial data, which is the data below, collected over nearly 25 years from Ohio, indicate the established critical levels of what we just wrote here. 15 parts per million Bray P1. Well, that's parts per million. So parts per million is 1/2 of pounds per acre. And you guys are running a Malick 3 soil test. So we have to do a little calculation. But this would be 20 parts per million phosphorus or 40 pounds per acre. That's your critical level. So 20 ppm or 40 pounds per acre, that's the same number. Okay, it just depends on how your soil test is written. Okay, and they're saying that's the critical level. And 100 potassium parts per million, that's 200 pounds per acre. So same number, 100 parts per million, 200 pounds per acre. Those are the critical levels. Go down to the bottom of page 10, read in the gold bubble from Purdue. If you find soil test levels of phosphorus and potassium are optimal or above, the most profitable rate of P and K is 0 pounds per acre, regardless of fertilizer cost. So this isn't a, well, fertilizer costs $1,000 a ton message. It happens to coincide all right, but we've been talking about this for 5 years because this is kind of what the data says. Now, you may have another reason, like you may want to build your soils for a future generation, maybe a grandson or something like that. That's fine. But all we're talking about here is you may have other motives for doing what you're doing. But if we're just going to look at the raw data, we got it right here on page 11. Okay. So page 11, the top table is about phosphorus. And remember, the critical level is 40 pounds per acre or 20 parts per million. So the first column is parts per million. So where it says very low and low in red, those are below the critical level. The first two columns are below the critical level. And if you follow it over to the third box, it says there's a 65 to 80% probability of a 20 to 25 bushel yield response if you spread it there. So what we're not saying, do not spread dry fertilizer. I'll say that again. We're not saying don't spread dry fertilizer. We're saying think about dry fertilizer different than most farmers have ever thought about it. Meaning it has to pay for itself, just like every other input that you buy, you expect that, right? You expect, well, it's got to give me a positive return. And we've always thought that with everything except for dry fertilizer. So what we're saying is we probably need to think about that the same way. And so that's where it makes you money. If you're below the critical level, even at today's prices, if you get 20 to 25 bushels, you're making money doing that, okay? The next box is potassium. First two boxes would be below the critical level. The red ones are below the critical level on all CECs. So let's just look at that. You have a 70 to 100% probability of a 30 to 40% yield response if you spread potash below the critical level. That's enormous because Purdue says that that is roughly the same on beans as it is corn. So we're talking about you can get about 18 or 20 bushels of beans or 60 to 80 bushels of corn if you spread potash below the critical level. Those are huge responses, and even at today's prices, making money, okay? But you go on down and you see that it drops precipitously. So the question really is, what's the average phosphorus level in the state of Indiana? So I actually brought this with me. A lot of times I'm whipping it off the top of my head and I can't quite remember. What do you guys think the average, if the critical level is 40, what is the average in the state? So this average comes from A&L Great Lakes Laboratories. All the soil tests that come to them from the state, they put it in a spreadsheet and then they spit it back out. We can see what that says. Got any guesses?
Mine is about 40.
Parts per million?
No, 40 pounds per acre.
40 pounds per acre?
Looking at my field, that's about 40 on average here. So that's
Okay. So the average is 43 ppm, 86 pounds. So the average is double the critical level on phosphorus. That's just the average. Average means nothing, right? I mean, you stick your right foot in a bucket of boiling water and your left foot in a bucket of ice water. On average, you feel pretty good, right? So I don't know what we do with averages, but I'm just saying that's the average, okay? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to vary between all your soil types. The average potassium in Indiana is 143. I just can't seem to get a marker that wants to cooperate. 143 parts per million or 286 pounds per acre. 200 is the critical level. So the question is, what percent of the soil tests that come in are above 20 parts per million, or above 40 pounds per acre? What percent on phosphorus? 78% in Indiana. So 78% of all the soils are above the critical level. We'd have a very low likelihood of making any money with dry. But 22% of the acres would make you money. We need to find those 22%. So this is my plug for soil sampling. If you do not intensively soil sample, you do not know where those areas are. And that's where we can make money with dry. That's the fastest way we have to raise your APH. is to find the 20% below the critical, and the number for potassium is about the same. It's about 20% of the acres are below the critical level. Where are those acres? Fix them now. There's no reason to fix them over 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and just have a yield loss for a while. Like, why would we do that? Because we're not going to make any money with dry on the other acres, so those can become zero, which makes you kind of cringe a little bit. But if we go ahead and spread the acres above the critical level, I just want you to know what we're actually doing with that decision. It would be like taking $100,000 to the bank and saying, I'm going to put this in the savings, but I don't want any interest. Don't pay me any interest. It's there. You know it's there. If you go ahead and spread the dry above the critical level, it's not going anywhere. It's in the bank. It's in the soil bank just like it's in a regular bank. You're just not getting any interest. There may be better ways to spend the money. That's the idea. Yes?
A lot of agronomists would say, well, if you need to put dry out there to replace it.
Yep.
Because obviously you don't need to do it before dry.
Yep.
You gotta replace the tile.
Yes.
Can you talk to that?
Sure can.
Areas above the critical.
Yep. So if you didn't hear what he said a lot of agronomists will say, yeah, but you got to put replacement. You raise 250 bushel corn, you got to put the replacement back out there. I would say, and as Danny would say, it's a whole lot more complicated than that. Like, just when we think we got this figured out, we don't have this figured out. The soil is a very complicated thing. And you mentioned biological life. So there is something going on with the soil biology. We know that we're mineralizing phosphorus and potassium from soils. We know that there's way more in the soils than what we can use. It's how do we make that available? And I think there's a story with the fence row that maybe goes along this realm. So, when we tear out a fence row that first year, my word, that yields right there in the fence row. That soil acts differently, it behaves differently, and then we start tilling it and we start spreading high salt fertilizer on it, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So I can tell you that we have, we've got customers that have not put on fertilizer for 4 years, and they go back and they're like, whoa, and it's dropping a little faster than what they thought. We have a math equation. Tyler and Danny know that math problem. Just to go, it should drop about this. It just isn't, it's not a math problem. So for some people, it does pretty close to that. And then we got people that have went 10 years, they've not spread a pound, and their levels are higher than they were when they started. So it is a lot more complex. Do you want to add anything to that, Danny? Okay. Yeah.
Are critical levels, are those same for all soil types?
Yeah, I mean, phosphorus, yeah.
It's a little bit different on the low exchange soil.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit lower critical level on that. But it's, above that, it's the same across the board for soil types.
Table 3 on that page has that, what Danny was just referring to. Table 3 shows you that at a 5 CEC, your critical level is only 88 parts per million or 175 pounds per acre. And as your CEC goes up, your critical level goes up. So we've got all that information for you there. Great questions. Below the critical level, we need to spread it. We would be doing you a disservice if we told you not to. If you are like the average of all soil tests in Indiana, you probably have about 20% of your acres that you need to address. If you're like the average, right? Yeah. Yeah.
What would you suggest for potassium, for example?
That's a great question.
How would you max out, anything over a certain number of pounds, you're just really not getting that in the soil?
I may have a different opinion than Danny or Tyler. I don't know. I'm going to say, what would you say on your max rate of potash?
We don't like to put on more than 300 is like, that's kind of, you might do that in front of corn, but soybeans, that would not do well. I mean, you wouldn't want to do that in the spring on soybeans for sure. But,
Yep.
there are different ways to do it. I think it's gonna depend on the particular situation. And if any way you can kind of build it in multiple applications, that's the way to do it so you don't lose what you're putting on there. Anytime you put something in there involved, you've got a chance of it being lost to the environment too easy. You want some way to build it over time so that it has something to cling to.
Yep. That's good. Yep.
So on my low phosphate soil,
Yeah.
okay, so it says that I've got like 30 pound available per acre.
Yep.
And if I want to get that up to, let's say 60,
Yep.
then that takes,
Then how much can you do?
well, but I mean, that's 100 pound of DAP or trips or superphosphate. I mean, it's 46%. If I put on a pound, that's 46 pounds
This
per
get
acre that I'm applying, which quote is not really that much.
not really that much. And that's not how that math problem works with like raising it. So let's say you're like a 30 and let's say you're at 30 and we just want to get to the 40, which is the critical level. But you say, I want a little fudge factor. So I want to get to 45. Okay. So I want to go from 30 to 45. So I want to raise it 15 pounds per acre. Well, it takes about 20 pounds of DAP to raise it 1. So 20 times 15 to raise it all the way to 45. Right now, that's 300. Is that 300? Yeah. That's what you would have to do. And that doesn't account for any removal. That's just raising it. So when I say you need to fix it right now, well, sometimes that's just me being ridiculous. Okay, maybe you can't fix it right now. You're right. Maybe it's a couple applications, but it's not an 8-year build, I guess would be my point.
So where's the rest of it go? Is it because it's not so readily available? I mean, within the
Well, okay. Pounds on a soil test is different than pounds of fertilizer.
Okay, well then, ppm, it's that times 2 million, correct? For the top 6 inches of soil.
Yep.
And so you have, what'd you say, 1.5 ppm or something like that is 30? We're starting to get into
Yeah.
We're getting a little in the weeds. I want to let Brian get through his presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Then we can come back. But I think the main thing for us to grasp from all of that data is that if you're below the critical level, dry fertilizer makes you money. If you're above it, it doesn't. It doesn't make you money. Okay, so that would be the main thing. Putting it on is like being okay with no interest. Okay, let's flip over to page 12. We're gonna move into step 2. Step 2 is where we get into a lot of new information because step 2 at the very top of the page says we want to create a personalized nutrient approach that spoon feeds nutrients in available forms. So we're just going to stop right there and talk about available forms. So the first thing I want to do is look over here at page 13. So at the data on the top of page 13 talks about how there's the ingredients matter more than the analysis. Okay, so let me give you a for example. Let's say I've got 624-6 and I call retailer A and I call retailer B. I say, what's your price? And this guy says this is, whatever, and this is whatever. And whoever's the cheapest, that's what you go with. Okay, but that's not the way that this actually works because we can make 624-6 with any of these ingredients that I got listed right here. These are the potassium source ingredients. We're going to talk about potassium right now because it's a huge driver for yield, okay? It's the secret sauce to everything I'm going to tell you about, and I'll give you a story in a minute as to why. But potassium is incredibly important. So we can make it, and you think it's the same analysis, so it's the same thing, but it can be a vastly different product, okay? So for instance, let's look at potassium borate. It's on the right, and it's almost at the bottom. And it says, beside it, it says 15.8. So all these numbers that you need to know is the higher the number, the more available the product. The more soluble, the more available. The lower the number, the less available. So if I make 624-6, and the 6 obviously is the K, so NPK. So I make that 6 with potassium acetate. It says a 255 versus potassium borate at 15. They'll both still be a 6, but the potassium acetate version will be 18 times more available. You can look at this lots of different ways. You can say, well, I can use 18 times less. Yeah, well, yeah, you could. Or you're going to get 18 times more potentially in the plant than the other version. This is not something that is taught to farmers. This is something that I guess the industry doesn't really want you to know. The derived from how it is made matters more than the analysis. So we know this in medication, right? You go to CVS, you grab some acetaminophen, 500 milligrams. You look at the Tylenol bottle and the derived from says acetaminophen, 500 milligrams. You know that's the same stuff. We do this with chemicals, you know? It's like, it's atrazine, Okay, but we don't do it with this. And this is extremely important. If it is not soluble, it cannot do anything for you. This is why the liquid fertilizer part of the industry, I think, has gotten a bad rap over the years, is because they've used inferior, unavailable ingredients, sold it at a good price, and it doesn't work most of the time. It doesn't work most of the time because it's not soluble. If it's not soluble, it can't get in the plant. Okay? So what we see at the bottom chart shows that the acetate molecule gets into plants 40% faster than all of the other versions. This is not new information. This is from the Journal of Plant Nutrition in 1986. It's just, we haven't had a whole lot of potassium acetate readily available for that many years, but this other stuff is cheap. So look at potassium chloride, the solubility of it. What is potassium chloride? 0060. So that's the dry fertilizer that you're buying. It says it's got a 34.3 solubility. So potassium acetate is 8 times more available than potash. So it's just more soluble. That matters. Okay? So potassium acetate kind of stands apart. Looks like citrate and hydroxide, pretty good sources. Carbonate, pretty good, but even hydroxide is half as available as acetate. So these are little things that really make a big difference. Okay, now let's flip back over to page 12. This data says what's the percent soil humidity to keep potassium soluble, to keep it soluble. So I think this data speaks to, if you think about when you're driving down the road in the summer and corn's knee high and it hasn't rained in 3 or 4 weeks and it's pretty hot, and you look, and especially on a little clay knob, you see the lower leaves of the plant are yellow on the outside edge and kind of brown on the outside edges of the lower leaves. Anybody ever seen that when it hadn't rained? And then it rains, and then it kind of just grows out of that. So the National Corn Grower Champions, they don't hit these ridiculous levels by not paying attention to details. And what we're challenging everybody to do is we can pay attention to the same details. We can make this logistically feasible on a large-scale operation. We don't have to do stuff every week, but if we understand the correct forms and how they're different, we can use them similar to spoon feeding in an NCGA plot, but we're not doing stuff every week. We're just doing what you're normally doing. So look at this data. Potassium acetate, this data on page 12 basically means this. How wet does the dirt need to be for that source to be soluble, to be available? How wet does the soil need to be? So my first question is, does anybody have those precision planting sensors that tell you your soil moisture when you're planting? Anybody have those? You got one? When you feel like it's fit to plant, how wet is the soil? Yeah. Pretty standard. So now I think most guys like to say, but my neighbor, if it's 50, it's fit to plant. I mean, that's usually what we like to, but if it's 30 or 35, that's probably fit to plant, okay? So look at this chart. Potassium acetate needs 23.3% soil moisture to be available. If it's fit to plant and the soil's 30%, that means with that source, we can use it at planting and it's available. No other source is available at planting. That's what it says here. No other source is available at planting. And you might be thinking, well, I don't need potassium at planting because I spread potash. But what we spread is potassium chloride, and the soil needs to be 85% saturated for it to be available, for it to remain soluble. This is why when the soils dry out, we see potassium deficiency. We spread 300 pounds of potash last fall. What's the problem? It rains, it goes away. We can fix this. It's just got to be a different form, okay? So the real question that should be in your mind is, at planting time, do we even need any potassium? At side dress time, do we even need any? I mean, is that something that's needed then? Because I think this information is really, really, really important, because you think about your side dressing, how often is the soil 85% wet? You wouldn't be out there if you, right? So the question is, do we need it then? And if we do, what happens if we give it a source that it needs at the right time? That's the next page. So we're still on step 2, but we're going to talk not about available forms, but we're going to talk about key times. So this is universities all over the country have done this research for many decades, and this data all exists in individual research papers. We just had to go out and find it, put it all together. So we got 2 pages for corn, the next pages are for soybeans, and the next pages are for wheat. But let's just take a look at these green bubbles. These green bubbles are what the crop needs at certain growth stages. And so what we do at Yield Innovations, multiple things, we give you all this kind of information, but we create products that align with the needs of the crop in forms that it can use. We create a system that gives it what it needs at the right time. So let's look at the first green bubble. So the corn is coming out of the ground to V4. So it's, I don't know, 10 inches tall or something. It says we need 7% of the zinc. Does anybody use zinc on your planter? Yeah. I think when we have grower meetings like this, it's usually the vast majority use a quart of EDTA zinc on the planter. That's a typical thing. Now, does anybody use any zinc, like later on? That is not as common. So if we just take a look at the green bubble, 7% of the zinc is needed when the corn is coming out of the ground. Look at the third bubble. After head high, let's say we're at fungicide timing, 55% of the zinc is needed. Now that is not as common, that people would actually put that on, okay? That's when we need the majority of it, but the vast majority of farms, we put it on with the planter. So what we're saying is that we need to have some on the planter. We need some at side dress time. We need the majority of it late. Okay, so just follow that through with all of this. When the corn's coming up, we need 11% of the potassium. He said his moisture sensor says it's 30%. None of the potassium is available when the corn is emerging, but we need some. We need 11% of it. We're not getting it from the soil. Not at that time. It's too dry. Potassium acetate only needs 23% soil moisture. So we could put that in the furrow. We could put that in a 2x2 in an available form, and it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much because the placement is right. The form is soluble. It doesn't need to be very wet. That form, we can get it in. What we have seen is when we do that, that's about 7 bushels, giving it some potassium in an available form on the planter. Your planter may be in furrow and other guys may be 2x2. It doesn't matter. We need to get more in there. So I want to talk about potassium for just a minute. While we're on potassium, I'm going to say you're going to hear a lot of stuff here today, but potassium is the secret sauce, okay? If I got to tell you there's one little secret, I'm going to give away the secret. It's potassium. And so here's the deal. So if we take a tissue test, not everybody's doing it, but let's say we just do things the way it's always been done, and we take tissue tests. We typically, early season, when the corn's about this big, we'll see something like 4 to 5% nitrogen, and we usually see something like 1 to 2% potassium. That's really common. When we add potassium acetate into the planter, these numbers, we got to figure out the rate. This is where your soil, your farm is going to be a little bit different. Sometimes it takes a couple years to really dial it in, but we want those to be the same. We want those to be the same. When those are the same, everything changes about the way the crop manages drought stress, the way it manages early season diseases. Everything changes, okay? And I want to kind of show you why. So you guys, like this is my little corn plant. We'll just, I'm not an artist. Got a leaf here. So in the growing season, in the evening, you go out and you smell the corn, and respiration has begun in the evening, and it happens at night. And on the surface of these leaves are these, it looks like I'm drawing an octopus tentacle, but are these things called stomata or stomates, okay? So these things regulate water in and out of the plant, respiration. That's what they do, okay? So they open up like this at night. Whenever they open up, they create a vacuum in the plant. And this vacuum comes down here and it pulls from the soil rhizosphere. The soil rhizosphere is that area right around the roots. That soil acts differently than the rest of the soil. The rest of the soil we call bulk soil, but the soil that has been impacted by a root is completely changed forever. The root exudates that come out of that plant change that soil. There's organic acids and amino acids that are in those root exudates. It creates a more oxygen-rich environment around the root. There's more there's more fertility. There's more biological life. So when you pull a plant out of the ground, it's the soil that's stuck to the roots. That soil's different, okay? So from that soil, it is pulling nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium and sulfur and manganese and boron and all that stuff, zinc, all that stuff. It's doing that all night long through the process of respiration. So respiration, you wake up in the morning, you look at the corn, and you feel like, man, looks like my corn grew 4 inches overnight. And it did. It was getting drip drop fertilizer all night long through the process of respiration. Now we get to 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, sun's getting high in the sky, and we want these stomates to shut down. They need to close, because if they don't close, water is just going to evaporate in the middle of the day. What causes these stomates to close? This is like really important because it can change the way your crops respond to stress. Somebody say it. Potassium. So it gets to be towards noon. It closes down. What happens is the plant pulls potassium from the stalk, from the leaves, from all the plant parts, and potassium floods these stomates and closes them down. What we have noticed is that if we're in the 1 to 2% range in the plant, there is not enough potassium in the plant. Maybe there's enough in the dirt, but if it's not in the plant, it doesn't matter what is in the dirt. All that matters is what is in the plant. So if it has been dry and we can't get that potash out of the dirt, then we're not where our plant levels need to be, then some of these stay open. When these things stay open, what do you have? You've got H2O just evaporating out of the plant in the middle of the day. So this is why one field over here looks incredible, and the field over here looks like it's really under drought stress, and we always just think, well, that guy must have planted it wet. Well, he might have planted it wet. There may be some compaction, but it may not have anything to do with that, right? And if there is compaction, well, that's a double whammy because it's not accessing potassium, again, because of compaction. Okay, but this is the secret sauce. Build plant potassium levels. The plant responds to drought differently. As you guys know, we get these periods of it doesn't rain for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We get periods of extreme stress, and then we get a rain. It seems to be better for a bit, and then extreme stress, and we just don't know how long those things are going to occur. And so what we're doing is we know that potassium is responsible for two big things. More than that, but drought tolerance, disease resistance, and ultimately yield. And it's yield because potassium, that's probably the most important sentence I'll say all day today. Potassium is the gatekeeper for the uptake of all other nutrients. So potassium is the gatekeeper. So if we have really good plant potassium levels, we tend to be fine with zinc, boron, sulfur, manganese. We don't need 30 units of sulfur, like a lot of magazines are telling you. If we have protected it, if we put it in available forms, if we put it when it actually needs it, we don't need that much. We have customers raising 280 bushel corn off 10 units of sulfur, okay? So we don't need as much as everything you're hearing if our potassium levels are good in the plant. And if we're giving the sulfur that lines up with page 14 and 15 when it's needed, and we protect it and keep it from leaching, because sulfur leaches big time. Thiazole, that's a big problem. We lose it, okay? Questions about this thing? Potassium's important. Look at the, yeah. That's a great question. So is potassium acetate foliar applied or is it as effective soil applied? So we have that data on those previous 2 pages to basically show you that. So the data on page 12 is about soil. So if we put it in the dirt, we only need 23% soil moisture. So it is the most available in dry soil conditions. So it's great to put it in the dirt, okay? And then page 13 is really about foliar applications. It's the most soluble form. It has the fastest foliar absorption. So we have a product I'll tell you about in a little bit that is potassium acetate, and we call it our 5-tool product, kind of like a 5-tool baseball player, because we can side dress with it, we can wide drop with it, we can put it in a 2x2, we can put it in furrow, and we can foliar feed with it. Potassium acetate is the most versatile ingredient there is. You can do it all. There's no mixing challenges with anything that we've found. Fungicides, herbicides, doesn't matter. We have not been able to break it yet. In furrow, yes. Now we're going to watch the rate, and that information is in this book, but you can go in furrow. We can take an existing product that is not very good, and we can make it a whole lot better by spiking the in furrow with potassium acetate and nanotechnology. So we'll go through nano. It'll make a lot more sense when we get to the end. The last green bubble to just take a glance at is interesting to me because it's a fungicide time. And look at the bottom 4 ingredients. 58% of the sulfur, 55% of the zinc, 38% of the boron, 46% of the manganese. Those are enormous numbers at fungicide time. So what we found is, so what we do is we just create a product that's what's in it. That's called kernel filler. Okay, that's what's in it. And it fills the kernel and it makes it deeper. And if we haven't addressed fully potassium, we still need 41% of the K. We could spike it with that and add test weight. So we know what these things do and what we need to do to get the desired effect. It's just a matter of thinking differently. That's the hardest part of this whole discussion today, is that this is not the way we've always done it. This is the hardest part. And it's hard to change, right? But we're trying to give you all the data as to why you should consider it anyway. Okay, so just for the sake of time, let's just flip to the next page. You got soybeans. The only thing I want to show you, just real quick, because it blows my mind. It took us 2 years to get this information. We finally got it. Just look at the last green bubble. I don't have the answer for this one yet. I'm still scratching my head. The last green bubble says R4 to R6, and look how much nutrient is needed after we're done doing anything. Now, generally, like if you do fungicide, you probably did it at R3, and then you're done. And most of us are kind of done in this window, and this is when all this is needed. And I think this is part of the reason when we say, well, it just seems like with beans, if it rains late, man, they'll really yield. And if it doesn't, well, that rain late is making all this stuff available in the dirt. And this is the biggest demand. So what we are testing right now, we have some customers. This is kind of how we do proof of concept. We just have customers, like one of you may say, I want to be one of those guys. Okay, well then at R5, we're going to go back out and we're going to give you a little mix of stuff that has all this in it. And we're going to see if we can impact yield. We're not to that point yet where we're telling you to do it. We just got this information. And now it's kind of like, oh, wow. Okay, we need to test this. So we're in the testing phase on that. And so when we are in the testing phase, we'll tell you that. And if we say this is a recommendation, we've already proven that this works 70% of the time. Okay. So let's flip over to the next one. That's wheat. And then let's go on to page 20. And you can look at wheat later for those that grow it. Page 20 is the last part of step 2. So it tells you that we've talked about available forms, we talked about key times. Now this is talking about in the right places. And what page 20 says is the right place for each nutrient is determined by how does that nutrient move in the soil. And so we have a picture here that basically shows you. If you side dress today in the middle of the row, what this picture shows you is that nitrogen, sulfur, so like thio, manganese, and boron, you could put all those in the middle of the row. And that's fine because those are mobile in the soil. And so if you look at page 21, it just tells you that the mobile nutrients move through mass flow. And that just means it rains and it moves with the rain. But rain doesn't move in the soil like a root grows, right? It goes straight down. So just because you can put it in the middle of a 30-inch row, so if this is my culture, you can put it here. Would it be better if you put it right over here, right against the plant? Well, yes, because when it rains, rain takes things straight down. This is the majority of my roots. So part of our system is this, and not everybody has to do this, okay? But if you really want to improve, this is part of our system for a reason. We would throw out the idea to bolt Y drops onto your 28 toolbar. And then you need a 300-gallon tank and a 12-volt pump. And then we've got these other things, other than nitrogen, going through the Y drops at the base of the plant, putting it right where those things need to be. And we're still putting nitrogen in the culture in the dirt. We're not putting nitrogen on top of the ground. We're putting everything else on top of the ground where we're going to get a morning dew and it's going to take it right into that plant. So we have customers that have, I think you can buy an add-on kit that just bolts these little Y drops onto a toolbar. We have a lot of guys that just kind of made that own rig, and that is not a very expensive thing to do because you're talking about a 12-volt pump, some hose, 300-gallon tank. We're going to run 5 gallons to the acre maybe through the Ys, and then all your nitrogen through the culture, okay? So we want to do that because if you look at the first picture, there are things that are immobile. I run into this all the time. Guys tell me, I side dress zinc. That's what they have me doing. You can't do that. Zinc is completely immobile. It's not moving, okay? So it has to go in the furrow, in a 2x2, or in a Y drop, or through the leaves. It cannot be side dressed. So all these immobile nutrients, they're not moving. Now, the far right says somewhat mobile. Potassium, calcium. Well, that potassium is really going to be dependent upon the source. So we talked about the data on the solubility and the how much moisture is needed in the soil. So like potassium acetate, if you don't want to do the wide drop thing, we can side dress with potassium acetate. That form will move. So we can do that, and we do it because, 2/3 of the guys say, I like this idea for the wide drops, but I'm not going to do it. All right, then we can do this with that form, okay? There's flexibility with that form. So the right place matters. Tyler and Danny know this information. So when we personalize a system to you, we're going to say this needs to go there and that needs to go here. That way you're getting your money's worth. You're getting it in the plant. If we get it in the plant, we can have a chance of it doing something. Page 22. Page 22, we move into step 3. So we're all about trying to address these diseases that are often overlooked, and root rots are one of them. So here's the concept that if our roots rot, whether it be corn or soybeans, I'm talking about both crops here. If the roots rot, they can't manage water or nutrients properly. And it's very, very, very common that when we're out scouting fields and we're in the reproductive stages, and we got pods out there or we got an ear corn out there, we pull the plants up and we look. It's very common to see 10 to 20% of the roots rotted. They're desiccated. There's little brown dried up ones. It's just a normal thing. But it doesn't have to be that way. And whenever we have any of those that are brown, well, they're not taking up water. So if we address root rots, we create a plant that can handle drought better. And I keep talking about drought, but what we feel like is a big key to higher yields is creating a more stress-tolerant plant. It's playing defense. It's defense. What is going to take my yield? There's 50 things. One of those is root rots. Okay, so this step 3 is twofold. That's at the bottom of page 23. We're saying that we need to do 2 things. High plant potassium levels is step 1 because high plant potassium levels specifically addresses rotted roots, and that information's on the next page. The second thing is using a product that's not ours. It's from FMC, but it's called Ethos Elite, and it is in furrow only. You can't use it in a 2x2. You can use it on corn and soybeans, but it has to be in furrow. Corn, it's 5 ounces. Beans, it's 6.8 ounces in 15-inch rows. It controls Phytophthora, Pythium, Rhizoctonia, and Fusarium. It has money-back guarantees on stand guarantees. So from our research, so FMC says they guarantee you in corn 1,000 more plants per acre. Money-back guarantee. So if you have 500 plants, they'll give you half your money back. Okay. Yeah. This doesn't deal with red crown root rot. The new seed treatment from Syngenta, just recently released, is a control of red crown rot. So if your seed company can access Syngenta seed treatments, you remember what that's called, Jackson? We can look it up in the email. It's one of those weird words that doesn't mean anything. But they now have something, and it controls it. It's like, I don't know, $15 a unit or something like that, but it controls it. And that is becoming a bigger problem. So that may become part of our system next year because that's a disease that's very yield limiting. So what this picture shows, these are Petri dishes. The first vertical row is just showing Fusarium, Rhizoctonia, and Pythium just growing freely, no problems. Then they take 1 drop of an active ingredient in Ethos and they drop it in the middle section. And you see where they dropped it, the bacteria, the disease can't grow around it. It's just kind of preventing it from growing around it. And then the third column is the same way. So basically there's these 2 different active ingredients in Ethos Elite that address those diseases. And it actually also addresses Phytophthora. We just kind of ran out of room to show that, but Phytophthora is another thing. So basically what we see is that you're not replanting anymore due to seedling blights. If it drowns out, well, that's another story. But from the plants just looking fine and then dying off, that doesn't happen anymore if you use this. Generally, this costs $8.50 an acre or something like that for Ethos Elite. So that's kind of part 1. Part 2 is this potassium thing. So flip over to page 24. High plant potassium levels reduce root rot infections. So this is Iowa State confirming in research publications that potassium deficient plants are more susceptible to root rots. And again, we can have potassium deficient plants, but have very high soil fertility levels. It's just that the weather, the dryness of the soil dictates that our plants are deficient, even though the soil's got plenty. Okay, so here's the 4 things that when we build plant levels, these are the 4 things that it's doing. Okay, it's strengthening cell walls, it's regulating the plant's defenses, it's that whole stomata, this whole thing, that's what it's doing. And then it creates more root branching, fine prolific root hairs. That's those 4 things that's written right there for you. Okay, that's step 3. High plant potassium levels, use Ethos Elite. In furrow only. Step 4, this sounds like an FMC commercial for just a second, but we're not owned by FMC. So they just have a couple unique things that other people don't have. That's why we're talking about them. Xyway, anybody using Xyway? Several. Anybody used it 4 or 5 years ago and quit using it? Yep. So if you used it 4 or 5 years ago and you quit, I mean, I don't blame you. It was a catastrophe. Okay, so they came out and they've had most people use it in furrow, and it's still labeled, but we recommend you use it in a 2x2, right? There's some issues with that. But when you do, if you got past that initial, man, this is a pain in the butt, if you got past that, then today, this stuff's awesome. They reformulated it last year, it flows better. In a 2x2, it does something that no other fungicide does. Okay, and that's why we put it in the system, because it's unique, it stands apart all by itself. And that's this data right here. So all of these little dots on this chart, these are all different fungicide active ingredient molecules. And basically this is just showing that if it's further to the right, well, it moves in the plant more. If it's up and to the top, well, then it has longer residual. If it's all the way to the upper right, that means it lasts a long time and it moves in the plant. Well, flutriafol is the active ingredient in Xyway, and nothing else does that. So if somebody tells you, well, you can do a V5 fungicide, that's the same thing. It is not the same thing. It's not even remotely close. There is no other fungicide on the market that does what Xyway does. This is the proof. We got more proof. So Michigan State University thought FMC was full of it when they came out with this product. They were vocal about it, and they decided they're going to do some tissue analysis, and they're going to prove that no fungicide can last season long and it does not move in the plant. And so they started a 3-year study. All universities go 3 years on everything, right? So the next page is the results of a 3-year Michigan State study. And so what this is showing is if you just look at the vertical bar, the vertical light green bar at 1 part per million, that's how much flutriafol or Xyway you have to have in the plant to control gray leaf spot and northern cornleaf blight. That's how much is needed. So what they did, this is an average of 3 years of tissue tests. The very bottom horizontal bar says roots. Well, that's how much Xyway they measured in the roots when they put it in a 2x2. The next one is stalk. That's how much they measured. Then it says ear leaf -5. Well, 5 leaves below the ear leaf. And then all the way up until you get to the very top bar, that is the very top leaf on the plant right below the tassel. You can see that one has the most. So this data proves that as the plant grows, Xyway moves to the next leaf, to the next leaf, to the next leaf. Yep.
On the Xyway, is the guy better off to run the full 15-ounce rate in this 2x2 or run the 10.5-ounce rate and anticipate coming back with a past weather season?
That's a great question. So the question for over here is the guy better off running the full 15.2 ounce rate of Xyway? That's the full rate, 15.2 if you're not using it. Or do you run 10.5 ounces and then plan on coming back with a fungicide? Both can work. This is where it gets personalized for your farm. But here's why I would pick one or the other. If you run a 15.2 ounce rate, then what we have seen is that if we didn't have a lot of tar spot this year, but like last year when you did have tar spot, it pushes tar spot back 2 weeks. It does do that. It doesn't control it. It pushes it back 2 weeks. If you use the full rate of Xyway up front, you're going to spend $20, okay? But it's going on the planter. There's no application charge with it. So that's the other thing to think about. There's no $15 an application charge with Xyway. It's on the planter. So it's the cheaper way to go, okay? But What that does at the full rate is it means that we are free to make that last fungicide application when we want to. It does buy you the freedom. You're not having to worry about, if you call a drone guy and you can't control when it's going to get done, it doesn't really matter so much, okay? So if he says, well, I can't get there for 10 days, that's fine. Also, if we do have something like southern rust come in or tar spot come in, well, you just have a bigger flexibility. If you go with the 10-ounce rate, you're saving money up front. It's going to control what we're about to talk about, which is Fusarium crown rot, which is another one of the big yield robbers. It's going to control that, but you are likely to, you're about guaranteeing yourself that you'll probably have to spray again. Where if you do the full rate, you might not have to spray again. It does. The full rate maxes that out. It can't be an FMC fungicide. So you could use Mirvis Neo or Trivapro or Veltima, but you can't use Adastrio or Lucento or Top Guard. Good question. This is okay, so we put this in our system for two reasons. The one reason you just kind of addressed, it provides flexibility. Like it does give you flexibility, and it gives you a fungicide pass with no application charge. And if you can get by with one, well, you just did it $15 an acre cheaper than you ever did it before. Yeah.
Show how this transfers to I suppose that goes into corn kernel too. What, is there anybody worried about that?
There's not been a whole lot of concern about that. It is wanting to move in the xylem. So it's moving in the xylem so effectively that you see it's congregating at that very tip-top leaf. Shortly thereafter is black layer. Well, once at black layers, nothing else is going in that kernel. So it's congregating in plant parts so much. They've not really seen any measurable difference in kernels. Yeah, nothing to get anybody concerned about it. Yeah. In the fodder left in the ground. It's a very common question. The question was, man, as long as this lasts, it's going to be in the fodder, then is it going to go into the soil and is it going to cause long-term problems with soil biology or kill off some beneficials or anything like that? So I know Michigan State has actually looked at that. There's been no evidence so far that it's harming anything. And when we get to the end of a corn plant's life cycle, they got that rate for a reason, because that's right when it's petering out. And so it's in that residue. You put it in here, but then it quickly dissipates into the soil, degrades with sunlight, just like our herbicides degrade a lot with photo degradation. So this starts degrading rapidly. And at this point in time, they've not seen that it then persists. Like we don't see when you go plant soybeans in 15-inch rows the next year, we don't see like healthy plants and not healthy plants. We don't see a bigger, robust plant and not from the leftover xyway. We've just not seen that so far. So if we hear of anything, obviously we would tell you. But at this point in time, it looks like there's a lot of talking points that like it's got to kill the biological. There's just no evidence of that. They've not seen. Where the residue is. Yep. So now we can go and I'll just kind of touch it. We can talk about this after the meeting because I don't want to get us too far off, but there's something else going on there. The corn plants are producing allelopathic chemicals. So maybe jot that down, that are harmful to the subsequent soybean crop. And so let's talk about allelopathy after the meeting. I'll explain that to you. Okay, so basically here's the other, so this is all super good, but the other reason that we have got this in our system is the control of Fusarium crown rot. Fusarium crown rot is a hidden yield robber that is taking the top end off of all of our crops. It's going to vary by hybrid. Different hybrids are going to have different susceptibility to it or resistance to it, but Fusarium crown rot is a big deal. So I drew this picture to kind of illustrate. Right down here, this is the crown of the plant. And in this crown, there are 4 sets of roots coming off of here, and that is in there packed V1 through V4. So that when that little plant is that little, packed into this little crown are the first 4 nodes. There's a 1/2 inch gap. This is V5. When we get to V6, it's moved above the growing point is moved above the soil line. But we still have this crown. This crown, think about this. This is another little big thing for yield. All the water and nutrients have to flow up through this crown to feed this plant. So if you were to take 10 coffee filters and stick it in your coffee maker and try and get to make coffee, it would take a very long time, right? That's the same as a plant having crown rot. So what happens is we get some version of crown rot. This part of the crown gets plugged up with disease. And it's going to vary by hybrid, by field, by soil type. But from everything we see, every plant we pull up has some version of crown rot. They're all infected to some degree. There is only one product that does anything for this, and that is Xyway. It suppresses crown rot. What we've seen, remember, high plant potassium levels specifically address disease resistance. So when we combine it with good plant potassium levels and Xyway, we see a massive reduction in crown rot. Now, here's a way that you can tell the way we see it, we got to pull the plant up, we got to take a knife and split it open, and then you can look at the crown and you can see it. But if you don't want to do that, you can just walk your cornfields and you can see it. Because here's what happens. Have you ever walked your cornfields, and as you're walking, you see some extra brace roots? Sometimes you'll even get another one partially coming out, and it's sitting there dripping sugar. Sometimes you'll get one on both sides, sometimes just one side, but it just looks like, man, lots of brace roots here. And I think we typically think, well, must be happy. Those are crown rot plants. So what is happening is that it's trying to bypass this rot. All the water and nutrients have to flow up through this crown. When this is plugged, it starts shooting extra brace roots out to try and bypass the rot. So that's just a quick visual. We all have it to some degree. Today's genetics can yield really, really, really well, but then they also, this is one of the weaknesses. They get crown rot. So that's the second reason why Xyway is in our system, and we'd encourage you to use it. But we would not encourage you to use it in furrow, only 2x2, and it comes with some handling challenges. We can talk about that later. But it's worth those handling challenges because it addresses this.
Question.
Yeah.
On application, we don't do the 2x2 anymore. The ground is dribble on top. Is that effective?
That's fine. That's fine. When they first came out, they said no, and now they're like, they even put a Y drop label, which is too late to get, yeah.
I use
Furrow jet. Yeah.
Is that too close?
What have you seen? Have you seen you haven't used Xyway yet? Okay. It's labeled to do it. I know. I'd probably go with the 10 ounce rate and run a couple strips of the 15 and see if it's okay. So here's the issue. If you put Xyway directly in the furrow, the plant has to metabolize it, and it takes 40 growing degree days to metabolize flutriafol. Well, on a year where it's really warm at planting time, well, that happens pretty quick. But if we get a rain and it gets cold for 2 weeks, we may not accumulate 40 growing degree units in 2 weeks. And so then you get uneven emergence and something that just make you want to throw up, just is absolutely horrible looking. You put it in a 2x2, all those issues go away. The furrow is the issue. The FMC rep's going to tell you you'll be fine. I think I would be cautious and do a 2/3 rate. Okay. Good question. Okay, let's flip over to page 28. We think there's a lot of bushels riding on the table that are laying out there. And we know we lose a lot. If the corn grower people can do 600 bushel, well, we're just wanting to capture some of those and not lose them. Okay, so what page 28 is showing us is kernel flex is really important. In the last 6-8 years, I'll say, we had a step change in genetics, and now the kernels flex depth. They get deeper. In the last few, I would say we're now seeing kernels flex thickness. So we're now getting thicker kernels and they're deeper. And this is why kernel count doesn't mean that much. I mean, a 16 by 30 ear can make 300 bushel corn. Yeah, it's just the way you do it. So this is the information. So we say a third of yield potential in this little picture is residing in the kernel's ability to flex depth. So this is the math. 16 by 35, 32,000 plants, got 90,000 kernels in a bushel, you got 200 bushel corn, 199.1. All we did, we left everything the same, and we just changed it to 60,000 kernels in a bushel, and I've seen a lower number than that, 298.7. So there's 100 bushels sitting there with just kernel flex. So we get kernel flex three ways. Number one is the genetics. Some of the genetics just have a better propensity to do it. So talk to your seed guy, and you want to be planting the ones that really, when they say, man, this can produce a horse tooth of a kernel, that's what we want, because we can influence that kind of genetic. Okay? So then the second part would be, we want to keep it alive as long as possible. So we can do that with Xyway. We can set it up with Xyway, create this super healthy plant, and maybe it's fungicides at around brown silk on corn. You know, it's fungicides on soybeans too. It's just they're so dang dependent on a late rain. It's not as slam dunk as it is with corn. It's yeah, okay. And then the third thing is, what does the corn plant need when we're spraying fungicides? And that's flipping back to page 14 and looking at those things. It still needs a lot. So we're going to create a system where we're also not going to ask you to spend any more money. We're just going to rearrange dollars, and we're going to give it exactly what it needs late. Build a much more robust agronomic system for you, giving it all the things it needs late. It shouldn't really cost you more than what you're spending now. Because a lot of the dollars that we're rearranging from are probably coming from a lot of the dry where your levels are high and we don't need to be spending money there. And we're going to take some of those and move them over to things that are going to make a bigger difference. Okay? So the last thing is on page 31. Okay, so before we look at any of that on 31, has anyone heard of nanotechnology? Anybody? Anybody used it? Me? Yeah? Okay. Most haven't. So the guys that started there's different nanoparticles that have been around, but what a lot is floating around out there today was started by a couple farmers. They're sod farmers. They don't like big retail, so they don't want to work with the large co-ops or nutrients of the world. So they're just kind of working with independents. And so we have been able to take this technology and really innovate quite a bit around it. So before we go into the page, I want to explain to you what nanotechnology means, you know, and what really, when we say nano, we're really just talking about size. It's the size of something. Okay, so to understand it, I think we just have to say, I'll just say this stands for nanometer. So how big is a nanometer? So if we're talking about nanometers, how big is it? Yeah, what'd you say? That's exactly right. So 1/1000th of a meter. So that's, you know, I mean, take this and chop it into a billion pieces. Gets pretty small, right? So the question is, how big is a human hair? They're like the diameter of a human hair. That's a good guess. I haven't had anybody, but a human hair is between 80 and 100,000 nanometers. That's the diameter of a human hair. 100,000 nanometers. This is just helping you understand the size that we're dealing with here. So that's a hair. So human DNA is 2.5 nanometers. So that little double helix thing you see in chemistry books, that's 2.5 nanometers in size. Human DNA. So crazy small. So what we are doing is we are taking A nanoparticle, it just means very small, okay, very small, and suspending it in reverse osmosis water. And I'll show you why. But these nanoparticles, the product that you would buy is called Nanobond 4Z for 4 ounces per acre, and they are 50 to 100 nanometers in size. So compare that to the size of DNA. This is crazy small stuff. When you look at it, you're going to be like, this is just water. Because you can't see it. It's really, really small. Okay, so the question is, what does it look like? And what is it doing? Okay, so a nanoparticle just looks like a piece of coral. Like a piece of coral that you'd find on the beach. They're just going to be oddball, you know how coral is, just oddball shapes and sizes. But when you look at coral on a beach, it's also porous, right? It has holes in it. These nanoparticles come out of silica, and that's what they look like. Just think about a piece of coral on a microscopic level. They're porous, they got holes in them. But they act like a magnet. So, before I go any further, I want to make sure everybody's really, this is the biggest game changer in ag technology since they invented fungicides. This is going to change the way that everything you use, with the exception of seed, how it performs. Changes everything. Okay? And I think I can make it make sense. So let's take a jug of Nanobond 4Z, nanoparticles suspended in reverse osmosis water. We're going to take it and pour it right into your tote of TrivaPro fungicide. This is unlike anything you've ever tank mixed. You're not tank mixing this. This isn't a mixing order thing where like you're going to put it last in the mix. Whatever product that you want to enhance the performance of, you're going to put the nanoparticles directly in it. Okay? You're not putting it in a tank mix because we don't want to load up adjuvants or something on a nanoparticle. We want to load the fungicide, or we want to load the nitrogen, or like you want to make Roundup work better, put it in the Roundup. It's not going to kill a resistant water hemp. It might piss it off quicker, but it won't kill it. Okay, but it'll make these things work better. Okay, so here's what it does. This is kind of what is going on. Whenever you take, let's just say we're going to take Nano and pour it right into TrivaPro fungicide, right into the tote. When you do, immediately, within seconds, the fungicide active ingredient rushes to the nanoparticles and just fills it up, okay? So it's just going to start filling up every single pore space. So it fills it all up, and then it immediately starts attaching itself to the outside. Because it's like it works like a magnet, and it gets bigger. It gets bigger, and it balloons up to about 300 nanometers. Remember how big I told you a nanoparticle is? 50 to 100. It's going to balloon up to this kind of size. Well, what else is that size? Plant viruses. Plant virus molecules are about that size. So now you can look back at the book. On page 31, there's this tiny little picture on the left. And what it's showing you is that every input that you guys have ever purchased goes into the plant one of two ways: diffusion or ion transport. That's how it gets across the cell membrane and into the plant, one molecule at a time. Now there's this third thing over here in this picture called endocytosis. This is how viruses enter plants. Viruses are too big to cross across the cell membrane. So the plant, but the plant recognizes it. And so the plant just opens up and takes it all in at once through the process of endocytosis. Okay? We've never had endocytosis available in anything you have ever purchased until nanotechnology. So now we can load a nanoparticle up with an active ingredient, because our active ingredients are insanely small. Okay? The smallest nutrient molecule is boron, and it's like 0.05 nanometers. 0.05. All of your nutrients are between 0.5 and on down to 0.05. Really, really small. So that means if we take nanoparticles and we pour it in your in-furrow row starter, your in-furrow row starter's performance just got a whole lot more consistent. Because now all of that fertilizer is loaded on a nanoparticle, and now when a root is present, it takes it in through endocytosis all at once, not one at a time, thousands of molecules at a time. Because it's so small, on one nanoparticle, that's 50 to 100 nanometers, how many boron molecules or phosphorus molecules that are 0.07, how many can we put on something that is 100? I mean, thousands of them. Thousands. This has changed everything. This has created massive consistency in everything. The first thing that they noticed, though, was fungicide. And I think this is the reason. It's when we spray fungicide on corn or soybeans, there's several things going on. The first is that when it sits on that leaf surface, it takes a little bit to get in. It takes 45 minutes or so, they say, on average. Depends on moisture and humidity and temperature and all that stuff, but about that. And let's say it's the middle of the afternoon and you're spraying it, they're flying it on with the plane. What's going to happen in 45 minutes while it's waiting to get in one molecule at a time? Evaporation. We evaporate a bunch of active ingredient. When we pour nano directly into your fungicide, it takes 2 to 3 minutes to get all the fungicide into the plant, because it just opens up, takes it in. It's a game changer. So what we've seen with the return on investment is incredible. It's scattered throughout this book. We got plenty of data from Beck's Practical Farm Research, from Precision Planting, from ABG Research Services and Sheridan, from universities. It's just scattered all throughout this book. It is the most consistent thing. It's changing the game. So we can add 4 ounces of Nanobond 4Z into your fungicide application for $3.14 an acre. It's not like we're breaking the bank here. Like this is and the ROI is huge. We can add nano directly into your UAN in your 2x2, and according to Beck's 3-year data, it adds $17.54 an acre return on investment. Costs $3, adds $17 to your pocket. Okay, it's a big deal. So what we have done is we're trying to formulate products that give the crop what it needs, when it needs it, and forms it can use, and then we put nano in it. So a lot of our products already have nano in it. So it'll drive it in and you'll get a more consistent response from the fertilizer. So this is, we're asking you to think, like, this is the future. This is brand new technology that we are using that's a lot different than what we've just been flinging out there for decades. Now we're taking it, we're putting it right where it needs it. We don't need that much. We're using available forms. We're using nanotechnology to drive it in. This doesn't take as much, okay? So that's the 6 steps. So I think what we'll do is let's just flip over now to page 38. And this would be like looking at a seed catalog for the first time, and there's 100 hybrids. And you look at it and you're like, what the heck? Well, you know you're only going to use like 4, right? You're not using 100. So page 38 and 39 is the Yield Innovations family of products. Now there's 42. Well, you're only probably going to use 5 or 6, just like you do with corn, okay? But we had to figure out how are we going to create a system that we could personalize it to every one of you, because you're all different. And so the way that we did that is we broke our products into families. And then in the system, we'll discuss the family. But the product for you might change versus your neighbor, okay? So the first thing to take a look at is the Yield Starter family of row starters. So these are in-furrow starters. The first 4 are for corn. The last one, Jumpstart SB, is for soybeans. And it's not fertilizer, because we found that does not work. Okay, not for soybeans. And so This works. This is organic acids and amino acids. It's not a biological. We can't get the consistency out of that. So the next family, in furrow only. Yep, that's where it's working. So like Alex Harrell, the guy that did the 218 bushel, he uses amino acids and organic acids and humic acids in the furrow. None of that is quote unquote fertilizer, but it's things that make fertilizer available and then hold on to it. And then we would put nano in there to deliver it into the plant, make sure we get it in once we capture it.
But you're putting like a fertilizer product in also with this?
Not on soybeans. We cannot get it to pay. We can get it to pay for itself, but not make you any money. And so we have just found soybeans act totally different than corn. We can make corn fertilizer pay. This is the different route, I guess, is what. And how beans. You remember on page 17 on the soybeans at R4 to R6. That's the huge demand. Way. Well, that's partly why we think we can't make a soybean starter pay, because it just doesn't need a whole lot early. But it needs something that can stick around all year and make fertilizer become available later. And that's what Jumpstart does. Yep.
So next is advertising, put on 30 units of N on your 2x2 soybean?
Yeah. And when I was the PFR director, we tried that and it didn't work. And now the data shows that it works. Put 30 units of nitrogen on your soybeans in a 2x2. And it's actually PFR proven. So that means it made money over 3 years. And I think what has changed is all that's on April planted beans. So 10 years ago, we weren't doing that as much. So
These are the details that we need to understand.
these are the details. And this is what we do. Okay. And this is what we train the guys on, and this is what we do. So the inside family, everyone in this room is going to want to look at this family. This family are products that go inside of nitrogen. Whether that be on your planter or at side dress time, they go inside of N, all right? And we'll hit on a couple of these to kind of just have you kind of see what we're doing. The Yield Builder family, those are foliar nutritional products only. Then we've got an adjuvant family. We're going to talk about one of them today. Innovations, and then there's a whole nano family, okay? So we'll get into the system last, but I thought I would we'll show you a couple products and how the product pages are written, because they're all the same, and then I think this will make a lot of sense. So flip over to page 81. And so now we're getting into product pages. So every product page is written the same way. We try and keep this real simple. So we've got a logo at the top, Humabond. And then it gives you a little paragraph, kind of opening, hey, here's what Humabond is. And then we do, what is it? Why use it? How do you use it? Every page is written the exact same way. It's got those 4 components. So Humabond, what is it? It's Nanobond 4Z. So it's that nanoparticle we talked about. You can buy just Nanobond 4Z as a standalone product and put it in your fungicide or whatever. But this product is Nanobond 4Z plus Humica. Humica is not our product. So this is part of what Yield Innovations does. We go out to the industry and we create relationships with people who have really good products. So Humica is the best humic acid product in the market. It's the most soluble. So if I say, well, it's the best, well, that sounds like that could be a matter of opinion. But if I say it's the most soluble humic acid available, that's a fact. It's made differently than all other humic acids in the market. So humic acids are liquid carbon. So they go and they mine leonardite ore. So now think about like a black big piece of coal looking thing. And then they extract it, the liquid carbon out of it, by subjecting it to high heat and high pH chemicals. And you make liquid carbon. It's great stuff, except for it plugs everything up. Now one tote won't, and then the next tote will. So anybody ever use this? Humic? So
Use humic acid for all those 10%.
Yep, and it just varies.
You end up with sludge like that in the bottom of your tote by the end of the season.
That's right. So you got all that stuff in the bottom of your tote, and that's the good stuff.
Yeah.
So this is why we have hesitated we've had to be very careful because you don't want your customer to have a bad experience. You don't want plugged filters. That's no good. So Humica is very unique. So it says it uses a different extraction process than all other humics. Cold molecular extraction says it takes 30 days to manufacture. All other companies that make humic, it takes 2 to 3 hours. So it's super fast, and then you get this crap at the bottom of the tank, plugs up your filters. There's no plugging up filters with this. They use it in greenhouses in drip tape irrigation because it's the only one that won't plug anything up. So now what we've done is we have now Humica is interesting. You guys are fortunate that you work with Danny and Tyler because you understand some of these things I'm throwing out that most groups don't get. But Humica has a CEC. What is your guys' CECs in your fields? 10 and then and you got areas that have maybe what, Danny? 4?
There's some out here.
Some lows, and then the highs would be?
Usually 15.
Okay, so 4 to 15 with an average of 10-ish. The CEC on Humica is 306. That's the holding capacity, right? Your CEC of your soil is how much nutrients and water you can hold. This product has a CEC of 306. It doesn't plug up filters. So because it has such a high CEC, it will actually statistically stabilize nitrogen just like a chemical stabilizer. And because it's the most soluble, we don't need a high rate. So most of the humic acids will be like a gallon to the acre. We're going to use a quart of this would equal a gallon. Okay, so we're going to use a 1/2 ounce per gallon of UAN and completely stabilize nitrogen. Plus you get all the benefits of humic acid, which is improved soil structure in the band of application, more of an oxygenated environment. Okay, but Humica holds your nutrients. If you have spread manure, we can use this product and it will, there's 2 components to Humica. There's fulvic acid, that mineralizes phosphorus out of manure. And then this Humica with this kind of a CEC will hold it there, and then the nano that's in here will deliver it into the plant through endocytosis. Thousands of molecules at once. So this combination is very unique on the market. So this is part of what we do. We take an existing product and we make it better, okay? So this holds and delivers nutrients. Let's move over to page, I'm kind of building a product for you. Flip over to page 61. Yes. Yes. Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit later. This is different. I mean, it's hard to compare it to the others because of the solubility, so that changes it. But because you can have a high, this gets too much for a big group, but you can have a high percentage of humic. But if it's a low solubility, which is what we have with all these products that are a gallon to the acre, it doesn't matter. It's like having a lot of something that's not available. They can, and they can be added back to it, you know. I told you the wrong page, so let's flip over to page 64. 64. So we've been talking about potassium acetate. So here's what we did here. Nanobond Ka. What is it? It's nanobond plus potassium acetate. So if you just want some potassium acetate, well, here's a better form. Here's potassium acetate loaded on a nanoparticle. So it's already got the most solubility. It's got the fastest absorption. Now we allow it to go into the plant through endocytosis with nano. Okay, so why should you use this? It says, well, the agronomic profit system, TAP step 3, we want to build plant potassium levels as part of your personal plan. So you might use this to spike your 2x2 or your infra or a side dress, or you might foliar with that for your plan because it fits what you're doing, right? We go through some information about what it's actually doing, and then we got some data down at the bottom, more yield. So in 2022 and 2023, Precision Planting tested potassium acetate loaded onto a nanoparticle. They foliar fed it at V5 on corn, 6.4 bushel, okay? Now, the rate they used to do that only costs $1.50. These are the things that we're trying to look at, okay? So what we did is we're like, if they can, now the company that sold Precision Planting that, they didn't charge $1.50, okay? They charged $6. So we thought, well, what if we put 4 times more potassium acetate in it and charged 1/4 less? Now we've got a return on investment. So now we can use a pint and it costs $6. Or if you're already doing something else, like let's say we want to spike your in furrow, we would do 4 ounces. That's $1.50. If you're already doing a foliar and you're like, this works for me, I don't want to change it, but I'd like to have some of that, well, we'd spike that with 8 ounces, for $3. It just doesn't take much of the most available form. So most available form, you're just going to, this is a add to things and make things better. So now let's flip over to the product that everyone in this room can use. Page 48. This is our #1 selling product. People use it for different reasons, but there's a reason for it. This product's called Increase. It's in the inside family of side dress additives, right, of nitrogen additives. So Increase, it says, what is it? It's thiazole plus Humabond, you just figured out what that is, plus Nanobond Ka. So this has nanotechnology in it to drive stuff in the plant. It has fulvic acid to mineralize stuff from the soil. It has humica to hold and nano to deliver. And it has potassium acetate and it has thiazole. It has everything in one product. So there are 4 ingredients that we say, 4 ingredients that we can use in different products to drive efficiency. There's 4 things. There's potassium acetate is known to drive tank mix partners into the plant because it has the fastest foliar absorption and it's very small. We use Nanobond to drive things in through endocytosis. When we want to put it in the dirt, like Increase, we want to put it with your 28% at side dress time, nanoparticles do not volatilize. So all the nitrogen loaded on a nanoparticle, it can't volatilize. Okay? Humic acid. So ours in particular, with Humica, a CEC of 306 stabilizes fully nitrogen. And then fulvic acid. These are the 4 ingredients that drive efficiencies. Make things available, drive it into the plant, take it into the plant through endo, take it into the plant, hold it. All of those are in Increase. So we have 4 products. So we have just fixed thiazole's problem. Thiazole's problem is you got to use a bunch because it's the most leachable nutrient that you're going to buy. And after the first big rain event you get, you're going to lose half of it, maybe more. So, and we don't need it all at once. So what's going on now is everyone does it different, but sometimes people put some on with the 2x2 and some on with the side dress, and that's good, right? It would be better if when you foliar feed, you put some there, and when you spray your fungicide, you put more then. So in a system, we would do all of those things. But we would use a form that is way more efficient. And the big reason why that we want to use Increase is flip back over to page 14. The first green bubble. The corn is coming out of the ground. We need 11% of the potassium. If you're using 1034O or thiazole or 28 or zinc, you got no potassium in any of those things, right? And we need the right form. We need potassium acetate so we can get it in the plant. This starts things off right. So we may use a gallon and a half on the planter of Increase. We don't need as much because it's a little plant. We only need 11%. And now we're going to get to side dress time. We're going to address that second green bubble with side dress time. And then that's where we're going to maybe go 2 to 3 gallons of Increase. And that's going to replace your thiazole completely. So if you're buying currently like your 28 with sulfur already in it, you can just tell them you just want straight 28. This will replace that completely. We're going to be able to use about 2/3 the rate because we have 4 things that are all about efficiencies and preventing it from leaching. and preventing it from volatilizing. Just don't need as much. Yeah.
Side dress, can that be put on, like on with Y drops, or does that have to be in the soil?
It can be put on with Y drops or in the soil.
I'm still using anhydrous, and I'd have to, there's no way to put that in.
Yeah. So what a lot of guys do that are anhydrous users, well, when they want to try and start giving it what it needs, there's lots of ways to do this. But a lot of times guys will do anhydrous pre, the majority of it, maybe 85, 90% of their nitrogen, and then just come back and side dress 28 with only maybe 10 gallons. Just, I mean, it's almost like a carrier to get the other things that are needed. That's pretty common. It'd be easier just to switch to 28. It might cost you more, so you might not want to completely make the switch, but that's where we'll figure this out for you. But we want to be a minimum of 3 gallons of increase to get the right amount of potassium out there. So 1 gallon followed by 2, or the more progressive, the more higher yield goal, you can bump that rate. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So could he put on like a Raven sidekick unit and put on 10 gallons or whatever you're wanting to do? I mean, there are 100 ways to skin this cat. Okay. And there's all kinds of things. So Jackson Manuel, the guy's regional sales manager, also farms. He's done all this. So he's got a side dress toolbar with Y drops that they retrofitted and jerry rigged and got it all working. So we got a guy here that has done it and does do it, and so he can help you figure this out.
Drop that chemical on top of the anhydrous trench and use your sealant and sealant. Will that cause an interaction with the anhydrous?
Ooh.
Question?
I don't know the answer, but that's scary. I would say stay away from that. I would just say.
You could dribble it in and have the sealant.
Well, yeah, you could do that.
Put it right on the back of the bar, on the back of the chain. And just let it dribble in and let the sealant,
You can try it.
Sometimes I say, let me talk to the chemist. Let me talk to the chemist. Can you jot that question down? We'll talk to the chemist about that, and then we'll get the answer to Danny and Tyler. Yeah.
Can you add this to your 28, like if you have bulk tanks?
Yeah, great question.
Or do you have to wait till you're filling your applicator and then add it with the applicator?
Okay, so the question was, can you just add it directly into your bulk tanks with the 28, or do you have to fill it at the time that you're using it? You can do either with this. Okay, so what we do is we have a couple different ways that we sell this stuff. We sell it in full 275 gallon totes, or we just deliver it bulk directly to your farm. Maybe you have a 2,500 gallon tank sitting there, 5,000 gallon tank. We take it to that tank and deliver it bulk directly to you. We have guys that leave it in that tank over winter. In the spring, they recirculate it. And then maybe they have a 28 tank on a tender trailer, and they just go ahead and fill that full of 28, and the appropriate amount of increase, they just go ahead and put it in there. And they do it that way. Others will do it as they go. I would say this, like if you have a large 30,000 gallon 28 tank, we don't want to put the increase in the 28 and let it sit there all winter. We would, within 2 weeks of use, it's fine. Within 2 weeks of use is fine. But all of these things eventually will settle. And so then, now, worst case scenario, you said, that doesn't fit my schedule, or it starts raining and it's been a month. We just need to have some way of bubbling it up, recirculating it, stirring it in some fashion if it's sitting in there for a long time. The nano takes seconds, literally seconds. So
2,000 gallon tank, you put the product into the nano in there, it would take just seconds.
seconds. Doesn't take long at all. Yeah.
In that bulk form, how many people want to store it in bulk? Will it salt out like ATS will?
No. So at the very back of the book, very last page, page 90, are storage and handling guidelines. And we've got every single product broken out by the family. So the first family is the yield starter family. So that's your in furrows, and you follow it across, and it tells you, everything says agitation is required. What we mean is, if we deliver it here in the fall, we just want you to agitate that tank in the spring before you use it. Any fertilizer product, really any herbicide or anything. Bulk heat required. No, 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 no. And then you get down to like the soybean one, yes. Okay, so the increase product we're talking about that you'd use in your 2x2 or your side dress time, increase, bulk heat is not required, tote heat is not required. So the Humica, the Huma bond in thiazole in this increased product does a phenomenal job of buffering salts. And we just don't, that has just not been an issue. Now you do want to recirculate it in spring, you want to do that, but we are delivering it right now to customers and filling up their tanks on an early bulk fill program that we got going on right now. So until December 15th, if we deliver it to your tanks, you get another 25 cents a gallon off, which is, you know, maybe $1 an acre. So we're doing that now. It's not, but this is the information on every single product. So Jackson or Tyler, I think we get the Nano Flow. Yeah. So the next product that I think we'll just talk about, probably just one other product. I think you kind of get the gist. We'll talk about this product. This just came out Friday. That's why it's not in the book. Okay, this product has already got so much attention that last Friday we hired David Hula's agronomist on the East Coast to sell it. So like this is getting national attention and going to really expand our marketing area because there is no other product like this in the industry. So this is part of what we do when we say yield innovations. It's like we want to take things that are existing and make them better. We want to take things and add things to it to give it what the crop needs. And then we want to innovate around products like this that required multiple patents. Okay, so this required 2 separate patents. One we had to license from AstraZeneca. Okay, so Nano Flow. It says a water conditioner. But what this does is more than just that. So this has something in it that we call Spectra. That's on the lower left-hand corner. So Spectra does 3 things. It lowers solution pH. It has color change technology, and it ties up bicarbonates. So this is a big deal. When we spray fungicides, when we spray herbicides, they work best at a pH of 5-ish. So flip over to the back page. There's some data back here from North Carolina State. And what they're showing, if we just kind of look at this, it says pH is 7. Follow that down. If we have a tank mix of herbicides and the water pH is 7, the average pH of well water in Indiana is 7 to 7.5. Then the half-life of that herbicide is 17 hours. Well, what does half-life mean? It means the length of time it takes for 50% of that material to degrade, to lose its effectiveness. So here's some aha moment for me. Look at the fungicide column. The pH is 7. We're pulling our water from the well. We got 3 hours to spray that, and we've reached the half-life. So it's not just about using nano to get it into the plant. It's the darn pH of our water. If it's 5, we got 10 hours to spray that tank off. If it's 7, we got 3. So if you filled up the sprayer and you sprayed some fungicide, then you're like, well, the sprayer's 2/3 full, but I'm going to call it a day, go to bed. When you wake up in the morning, that stuff isn't going to work. This is kind of important information. And I think you start piecing all these things together, you're like, this is why fungicide is so inconsistent. This is why, it's not, I shouldn't say that, because when we have a meeting this size, there'll be people that say, I wouldn't plant an acre without fungicide on every acre. And then there'll be people that say, I've tried it, it doesn't work. And then there'll be people in the middle. And I think all these things we've discussed today are the answers. And this is the most important one. Our water has to be the right pH. But then we've got all this calcium and magnesium and iron and rust and stuff in our well water. We got to tie all that up. So the second part of Spectra is something that required the first patent, and this is a new nano chelation technology. So when we say chelate, it means we're going to like tie something up or protect it. So what we're doing with the Spectra technology is we are using nanoparticles in this product, but these nanoparticles are 5 to 7 nanometers in size. I think I told you Nanobond 4Z is 100 or so, 50 to 100 nanometers. So this is a lot smaller. So a lot smaller, but it's still a nanoparticle. And the calcium and magnesium and iron, they're really, really small, like all the other nutrients. They're less than a half. They're 0.0 something. So we tie all that up. Now everything you're putting in the tank has a higher likelihood of working. So what happens is when you pour NanoFlow into your sprayer, the water is going to turn kind of yellowish and orange. And when you get the right rate, the water turns pink and it stays pink. Well, if you have humics in the tank, no. So here, yeah. This part is like Brant Indicate 5. So this first half of the product is like Brant Indicate 5. The back half of the product is why we're going to take lots of business from Brant Indicate 5. Okay, so there are a couple other products that do what I just showed you. They don't use the nano chelation process. They use a different process, but you know, you don't care about that. It's just, it works. Yeah. Well, it sure can be. Depends on the herbicide label. Okay, so the exception would be Liberty. So the glufosinate molecule, I believe, actually requires ammonium sulfate to activate it, to actually get it to work. So we still want you to follow label guidelines, but most other things like Roundup and other things, this is a replacement. No. What we think is going to probably happen is you're going to find that you can use less AMS. Okay, yeah.
I use the surface water source for my spray water. And it has some biologicals in it. So this is more like you say, hard well water as opposed to surface water.
Surface water source is going to be better. It's vastly better, but you still want to check the pH. So here's what's going to happen. The rate is going to vary based on every single one of you. This is where we're going to be different. So we have got a little kit coming to Danny and Tyler, and they're going to have a digital pH meter, and they're going to be able to, and we'll have a little beaker, and what we're going to do is they'll have this little 500 ml beaker, and we'll fill it up to 400 mLs in your water source. Not out of your barn, but like, because that may be softened, right? I mean, like where you're pulling it for your sprayer, we want to fill that water up. They're going to check it with this meter, and it's going to say 7.8. Well, on the back of this sheet is a little rate chart. And we're going to pick the rate based on the pH of your water. So that's going to vary from probably 10 to 22 ounces per 100. So we're not talking about a quart or 2 quarts per 100 or a gallon per 100. We're talking about maybe the average rate would be a pint per 100 if you have a 7 pH.
You put too much product in, the lower pH.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things work really, really well, really, really low, but some herbicides start losing their effectiveness if you get down into the 3s. So we want to check the water and get the rate dialed in, and once we got it dialed in, that's the rate. It doesn't really vary much. Okay, so those 3, yeah.
And also wanted to just add, you mentioned biocarbonates, and we have the well water supplies around here have very high levels of bicarbonates, sorry.
Yes. So we're going to tie all that up, which means they're not going to tie up your herbicide. We should see better control of everything that you're spraying, okay? There's 3 other pieces to this product. The second one is Leaf Link. So this we had to license from AstraZeneca. It's actually the same technology they use in the nicotine patch, believe it or not. That's a transdermal technology that makes it absorb into the skin. So this is very similar, but they mimicked with that technology the waxy cuticle of a leaf. And so I just think about it like a surfactant. It has an included surfactant. It's new technology that required a patent, but it's a surfactant. The third part that will kind of go along with your captured water is first aid, we're calling it. It's a unique biostimulant package. So included in this goes along with the agronomic profit system. We want to proactively manage stress. So what is in here is fulvic acids, seaweed kelp extracts, complex carbohydrates, B vitamins, and peptides. So this is a biostimulant package for proactive stress mitigation that is in it. This sets it completely apart from everything else that's out there. There's nothing else like it. The last part, the last patent, new technology, nano rain. So this is super cool, but it's a different nanotechnology. So well water, on average, has 2 parts per million of oxygen. Rainfall has 20 parts per million. So rainfall has 10x. So guys who do have overhead pivot irrigation will say, well, but it's not like a rainfall event. No, that's right. It doesn't have the oxygen in it. And when we get the oxygen goes into the soil. It helps with the whole cycle of nutrients. It feeds soil biology. Rainfall acts different than well water. So what we've done here is we have encapsulated oxygen at a 10x rate into what is called a net neutral buoyancy bubble. So you'll see these bubbles. They don't float to the top because they are net neutral buoyancy. So they just are dispersed throughout the spray solution, and they just contain oxygen in a nanoparticle. This is like molecular level stuff that seems completely ridiculous, but that actually is what we're doing. And so all of that in this adjuvant, that if you spray it at 15 gallons of water, it's going to replace AMS for most herbicides, but not Liberty. It's the surfactant in a lot of cases. This product, we almost put drift retardant on it. It has drift mitigation properties, but it's not as good as a full-blown drift retardant, so we decided not to put it on the label. So this is going to cost, if you spray 15 gallons of water, it's going to cost about $1.97 an acre. If you spray 10 gallons of water, it's going to cost like maybe $1.25. So somewhere in that kind of range. So should a heck of a lot more, and you don't have to pour a whole bunch of bags. Anti-foam properties, but it's not a full rate anti-foam.
This is interesting, but what else would we have to add to this to make?
The only thing that you would have to potentially add is a defoamer, which we have. Oh, well, deposition is phenomenal. I'm very familiar with Array. The drift retardant properties of Array Link is second to none. It just goes from mist to. This doesn't do that. That's why we didn't put it on the label. This is more of your make sure everything is working properly with the correct pH, tying up bicarbs, stress mitigation. Yeah. So the question is, do we have anything in this book to get this to spray to have drift retardant properties like Array Link? So on page 39 is the leaf bond adjuvant family, and so the adjuvants are at the top of page 39. The rate is in the name. So drift lock 2Q, 2 quarts per 100. That's just a drift retardant. Foam away, that's a defoamer. Anybody doing aerial applications or drone applications of fungicides? Okay, so like Target Lock 4Z is for aerial applications of fungicide. 4Z is the rate, 4 ounces per acre. So those are triple rinse. Everyone needs this. It's clean your sprayer out, triple rinse. So we need to probably do that more often. Okay, so let's wrap it up with page 32. And I'm just going to show you the agronomic profit system for corn, how to read it, And then this will look, do you want to pass these out? Or do you think we should? It's up to you and Tyler. Don't have to. Okay, so this is kind of the system. So you see 7 yellow bubbles down the left-hand side. So what we say is these are 7 opportunities to impact yield. Now you may not have all 7 of these things, and that's perfectly fine. We're going to meet you exactly where you're at. You may say, well, I only have 3 of these things. Well, we'll start with what you have. We might have to front load some things. If you don't have the ability to, have a 2x2x2, but you do have wide drops, we're going to have to do more later on. It's not the ideal timing, but we'll figure out what you have and we'll meet you right where you're at, okay? So the way you read this, let's go with the end furrow, follow it to the right, the products. It says a yield starter product. That's what we consider a personalized product. That's the family name. Yield starter is the family name of the end furrow. So we're not picking out a specific one because we have 4 different ones, and those have different agronomic properties and economic properties. So from the top to the bottom, there's $10 an acre difference. So there's different price points based on what you want or need or whatever. But then it says 5 ounces of Ethos Elite, 16 ounces of Sugar Kick. Well, those are what we consider foundational products to yield. Everybody should use them, no matter if you farm here or in Wisconsin or Kentucky. Okay? Ethos Elite is our root rot control. Sugar Kick is sugar and kelp extract for stress mitigation, and it feeds the soil biology. It feeds the biology of the ethos. We get better disease control out of ethos when we put sugar and kelp extract in the furrow. So that's why that's there. Then you move on to the right. You got the data, get some information. You got the why at the very end. That's the agronomic reason why we're doing those things. And so that's kind of how you read it. And then what we do next is we have a piece of paper that kind of looks like this, but it's got blank lines on it. So when Tyler or Danny or Jackson would meet with you, if you want to do this, then it would just say, there'd be a question on there. We've got these forms. Do you have in furrow? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then we move on down to the next one. And then we build your personal plan on this one piece of paper. Jackson's going to give you a copy of it so you can kind of see what we're doing. And then we build your personal system. And a lot of times we also keep in mind, like, what are you doing now? How much are you spending now? Let's try and keep the budget in check here. I mean, we're not asking you to just, we know what's going on out here. We're not trying to like spend an extra $100 an acre. Let's be realistic here and let's create the best program we can within your budget, that will have the potential to get more bushels. That's really what we're after. So if you really like this stuff and you're like, man, I really want to add in furrow on my planter or whatever, turn to page 88. There's an equipment program. And so we have 3 pools of money that we can pull from, just so you know. This is one of them. So there's a 4-step process. What we do is we determine your bulk nutrient order with your yield consultant, 2,000 gallon minimum for bulk. Commit to purchasing that for 3 years. Multiply your gallons times 20 cents a gallon times 3. And then we write you a check, up front. It's not like we give you 3 checks over 3 years. We give you the 3 years worth up front to help you buy a tank, or it doesn't matter to us. Whatever you're going to use to apply the product or store the product. The second pot of money is from FMC. So if you buy Xyway, we can get you $2 an acre back if you just give us a receipt for something that looks like planter parts, pumps, hoses, parts, okay? We can get you $2 an acre back from them if you use that. The third pot of money is in the way that we price things. So if you buy a jug and you move from a 2.5 gallon jug to a tote, the tote costs $1 a gallon cheaper than the jug. If you go on and you get bulk, it's $1 a gallon cheaper than the tote. We deliver it straight to you. There are no delivery charges. There are no shipping charges. We deliver it straight to your bulk tanks. So basically, if you go to bulk, you can pay for a tank just with that savings. I mean, a 2,500 gallon tank costs $2,300. the product's going to cost $2,500 less. So we kind of built the program into the pricing model. What else, Danny?
No, I think we did a good job covering quite a bit of material in 2 hours.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So about 20 years ago, I met Ryan when I had been a technical information manager with Pioneer, and then I was starting in this area, and I did about a 6-month stint as an agronomist with Bex a long time ago.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Less gray hair.
Yeah.
Then.
You too.
I know.